All right, welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you're watching us on video or you're listening wherever you get your podcasts, we appreciate you for joining us. This is Caleb Talley, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jeff Amerine.
Hey, Caleb. Glad to be back.
And Grace Gill, our podcast guest extraordinaire, host guest.
Thank you.
And today we're excited to have with us Jordan Franklin. She is the CEO, and that is Chief Exploration Officer at Stratice. And Stratice is a human capital management firm eager to help identify highly qualified candidates best suited for your company. Jordan, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we read somewhere that you had a resolution or a wish for the new year that someone would invite you to a podcast.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Yes. No, my resolution was to accept any podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So I turned down 22 podcasts last year.
Oh, wow.
In 2019, my resolution was to accept any speaking engagement. So I really hate public speaking. It makes me extremely nervous. And people that really know me think that's crazy because I love talking. So I accept any of those. That was my resolution in 2019. And then COVID hit, so I kind of got a pass. And then podcasts picked up in 21, and I denied 22 different podcasts. So that was my resolution.
Well, I'm glad that you accepted our invitation.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the new one.
It was the bourbon that made the difference, right?
Right. Yeah. Especially that you offered bourbon. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll be there. Yeah.
So tell us about Stratice. What is Stratice for those that are listening that don't?
Yeah, so Stratice, we started in 2015 and brought staffing to Stratice in 2017. We do IT, HR, automation engineering, staffing. So we go out whenever companies need new headcount or are adding projects to their itinerary. We go out and help them find that staff. We do it differently than big companies. We do it more in a concierge service situation. We really want to be their partner. We want to go out and sit down with the team, the hiring managers, really get to know what they're going after, what their strategy is for the next 3 to 5 years, and then help them fill those positions so that we're not putting out fires, but really filling a position that stays there for a long time. So short and sweet of it, but yeah, that's what we do.
And is it direct placement for W-2 employees, or you do some kind of try before you buy where they're contractors? We'll talk about the business model a little.
Yeah, so we do direct hire, contract, and contract to hire. So on the direct hire side, same model. We go out, we set up interviews and everything, but direct hire, those people go directly to work for the end client. But we do from the first contact with the person all the way until the person's hired. We just don't do the paperwork for the company, right? So we take them all the way through the interview process. We're basically their liaison. We even sometimes sit in the negotiations between the company and the consultant. So that would be direct hire. Contract, obviously what it is, they're our W-2 employee. We offer benefits and everything. So they are 100% our W-2 employee. We pay a portion of their benefits and everything. And they sit on our paper and act just like a Stratice employee, just sitting at the client's offices.
Gotcha.
And then contract to hire, normally 6 months, sometimes a year, just depending on what the client wants. And then they sit at the client's offices on our W-2. They still get all of our benefits during that time. And then the client at the end of that contract can choose to either extend the contract or bring those people on as their internal employee. Yeah.
Got it. How'd you get into this space? What led you into staffing, PO type of work?
Yeah. So I went to Hendrix and kind of got out a year early. Had enough credits to get out a year early, and then started working for another staffing agency, a larger staffing agency, that my father helped to start that staffing agency, quite frankly. Started working for them as an admin and then kind of grew my way through that company. Became their number one salesperson, running their number one office in Montgomery, Alabama, and doing all of their state, local, and education. So, and I was also their FSO. So I was running all of their security clearances and everything like that. We kind of went through a reorg and everything. I decided that it was maybe best that I leave that organization and then started Stratice. But I got in because my father was there and I had a year off in between what I thought was going to be med school and college. So,
Gotcha.
And then I just kind of fell into it, right? So I fell in love with it. I always wanted to help people. And as a young kid, right? Helping people as a doctor, right? I want to be a doctor. I want to help people. And I didn't really think about, there's multiple ways that you can help people. And so through recruiting, it really is another way of helping people. You don't realize how much of a counselor you are when you're coaching them into their next career move. I actually spoke in Montgomery, Alabama for Women's Day. And I was the first speaker, and the last speaker was a psychologist. And she was like, I think Jordan and I probably should have gotten together and wrote our speeches together because I'm basically just going to ditto what she said. And I have no psychology and never took a psychology class, never cared to take a psychology class. But I think you just don't realize how much you really are listening to what the people want in order to make sure that you're putting them somewhere that they really will thrive.
Got it.
So what does that look like now, this day and age lately in the war for talent and just kind of how challenging that has to be to kind of get people into those roles and look for people.
So
under every rock.
Yeah, every rock. So, and we only actually go after talent. Like, we don't post any positions, right? So we only go after talent that is taken, right? So passive candidates. So we don't post any of our jobs. We're actively seeking that talent that, like you said, under rocks, right? So I like how you said the war on talent. We say that it's a candidate market, just kind of like realtors say it's a buyer's market or a seller's market currently, right? It's really difficult, right? Because it's training too, right? So we're teaching hiring managers that they've got to be flexible, that they've got to be creative in their comp packages, right? Creative comp is like, I should have a shirt that says, let's get creative with your comp, right? And I think the more creative companies get, the better they're going to retain their talent, right? So not necessarily is it always going to be about salary, but it might be about a signing bonus, or it might be about, not technically a reload, but maybe it's more about, hybrid or, work-life balance and those kind of things. Like, we've got to really outline that. And that's where that, concierge side comes in. Like, what does your team actually look like? Like, when we say you want a full-time employee, is that 40 hours a week or is that 80 hours a week? Right? Like, what does that look like for your team? Because that's what I'm selling. Because I'm not just selling your position. I'm selling what you actually expect out of this person at the end of the day.
And I think that you make some good points. It's like you hear people talk about the lack of workers and the labor force issues. And a lot of what I've seen is not necessarily, I guess specifically here in Northwest Arkansas, some of the people that we're working with, not necessarily a lack of employees to go to. It's just kind of those employees are going to better opportunities, kind of bouncing around, going across the street for a better comp package or, whatever else people, because they know they have options.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not even across the street, right? So even in our industry, we're having California-based companies coming and poaching recruiters. Out of little old Stratice from nowhere, Arkansas, right? Like that's kind of crazy. And then they're offering California money to them, right? So there's all those different anomalies, and you have to sell your company too, right? So yes, that's really cool, But Stratice is cool because we have culture. You know, like we have a team. We go do things. Like if that's where you want to be, kudos to you. I'm going to be so excited for you. And I'm going to pump you up, and I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader, right? But I know that I want to grow something, and I know how I want to get there, and I know how I want to grow it. And I would love for you to be on my bandwagon. But if that's the bandwagon you want to be on, I'm going to be there for you. And if you fall off of it, I'm going to be right there to pick you right back up. But like, we've got to realize that that's what we're competing with too, you know? So they're competing for our talent, but we're also competing against the big guys too, you know?
Yeah.
So Walmart's not just competing with Walmart. Walmart's competing with everyone. You know, we're not just competing with the staffing agency up the street. We're competing with every staffing agency.
Especially now you work anywhere you want to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're competing with the giant tech systems or every single other company out there, you know? I mean, we staff nationally, and we have 2 brick and mortars. So if we can do it, everyone can do it.
What do your ideal clients look like? I mean, what's the ideal engagement and client size? When does it make sense for a company to come to you?
So that's a great question. I would say an ideal client is a one with a need.
Right. Sure.
But ideally, companies come to us when they have a couple of needs, right? So it's normally when they're hurting and they don't have an internal recruiter. But our ideal client probably has 3 to 5 internal IT people, right? And they're growing their team to, let's just say, plus 10 in the next year, right? And they really need help on doing that. And their HR doesn't have the IT function or doesn't really understand it. And their IT might not, you know, their IT leaders might not be the best at interviewing, right? So we do that first portion, and then they do the technical screen, and they're like, okay, yes, these are the candidates we like. On the HR side, a lot of times those are smaller companies that come to us, and they're like, we really just need an HR person, right? And then we fill that position, and then normally that's when they're about to grow exponentially, and then they'll come back to us and say, okay, now we need all these other people.
Gotcha.
But a lot of the times it's when their HR is small and their IT team's growing, and their HR just doesn't have enough bandwidth to go out and do it. Now on the state and federal, like SLED and Fed side, a lot of the times it's when they win a project, right? And I tell all of our clients on that side of the house, like, go after it and let us be your brawn. Like, we'll bring all of force and just put us on the contract and let us help you bid it so that you don't underbid yourself. Because we have access to all of that information. And then we just bid it with them and then bring in the people if they win.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool model.
Yeah. So, and it's really worked for us. I think starting on the government side for me was I brought a different flavor to a staffing agency. A lot of people start on the corporate side. It's easier. It's a faster win. It's like an instant flash, right? Like you've got it goes. But SLED and Fed is sticky and it stays longer. So a lot of the times when you start talking about a recession, like we're talking about, right? Those dollars or those funds are already encumbered for a certain amount of time.
Sure.
So that recession, a SLED or a Fed recession, is normally after a corporate recession.
And for those that may not know what SLED means, you're talking about state,
local,
funded?
and education.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm the master of 3 and 4 letter acronyms, so I was tracking with you, but some of the folks might not have followed.
That was just nod.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, SLED would be state, local, and education. Obviously, Fed would be federal. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Gotcha. Very good.
So what are like the differences when you're putting together a team for a company versus when you're trying to find talent for like just an individual role? Like how do you go about that differently?
Yeah. So when you're putting together a team for a company, I call it a staffing stew, right? Because they all think they know what they want, right? And they're going to come to you with like 10 different job orders. And they really want those people to fit into those perfectly like outlined job orders. And to every single hiring manager, I'll say, so really we're in like a staffing stew. Someone might fit like in between these two or in between these two, but as long as we get 10 that cover all of these things on these 10 job orders, then we're good, right? Because they can cross-train and we can get the right people at the end of the day. And that's really worked out. And then whenever you're really staffing for just one, you really got to know that culture, because then you're really putting one person into the middle of a culture that's probably pretty much set, right? And that's a little more iffy, right? Because you really got to know what's going on. How are they going to function within this group? Like, really know who they're going to be working with day in, day out, even if that's not the hiring manager. Okay, she or he might be reporting to you, but who are they working with every day?
Right.
Because that's how you know that person's going to stay. Because that's what your goal is, right? Because we have guarantees, and they've got to stay through that guarantee, or we don't get paid, right? So, so that's kind of the difference, right? And I would rather a staffing stew, because then I kind of have more play in creating the culture of the team. But I mean, we take the onesies as well. Yeah.
Keep up to date on the latest news in economic development with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission's Arkansas Inc. newsletter. Each month, get the Arkansas Inc. newsletter, which spotlights the latest project wins and developments throughout the state, delivered to your email. The newsletter features major project announcements, company expansions and relocations, news articles, rankings, and more that highlight why Arkansas is a great state to do business. The newsletter is a snapshot of what AEDC has been working on and what we are following. The Quarterly Tech Trends newsletter highlights the latest news in Arkansas's growing tech sector. You can learn about new Arkansas tech companies, computer science and cybersecurity initiatives, funding and venture capital announcements, and even more. AEDC offers 4 quarterly newsletters: the Food and Beverage Industry Digest, Aerospace and Defense Beacon, Timber Trends, and Tech Trends. To learn more or sign up for a newsletter, visit arkansasedc.com/news.
And I feel like doing the stew approach too, like you have the opportunity to really, to your point, be very mindful and intentional about building that culture out and kind of have the opportunity. I'm sure that's both fun but challenging, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. So in my previous life, so not with Stratice, but in the staffing agency I was with before, I actually helped them with the state of Alabama. We built out a team of 104 different consultants to do the eligibility and enrollment system for the state of Alabama. And that was really fun, but it was also really difficult because there was other staffing agencies on the team. So you didn't have full control of the culture, right? Luckily, we staffed 70% of the team. So we pretty much knew what the culture was. But it's really difficult. So when you're in that kind of situation, it gets a little tricky too. But yeah.
So, what do you love about having your own company, and what do you not love as much about having your own deal?
So what do I love? I love all the people and getting to communicate with like all the different personalities of our team. And kind of work through if they have a problem or an issue and getting to solve those with them. Having a science degree, that's kind of what I love to do, is work through those kind of problems. Even if they're just people problems or like solving how they can get, to their next career move or whatever, even inside of Stratice. So that's what I love, those kind of strategy communications. And then what do I not like? Operations, and that's the reason why Scott does all of that. That was my deal when we started Stratice, was that I didn't have to do any of the back office, just had to do sales and recruitment, and I've kept up my end of the bargain, and he has too, so I stay away from it. That's not my thing. I don't really like it. I love sales.
Sure.
I'm trying to move out of sales a little bit more so I can kind of grow our sales team and pour into them more so that they can grow better. And that's really hard for me because I love sales. Like, I love it. So that's really been a little difficult move for me. But I really like seeing them thrive too. So that's been a new thing for 22, and it's been fun.
What's the long goals? Where do you want to see Stratice the next 5 years, 10 years? What's that look like?
Yeah. So we're launching a new platform called Gumption this year. And so it's a separate company from Stratice, but also still in the staffing realm of things. And it gives the companies a different portal so that the companies can fully function and see and set up their own interviews and everything like that. It also gives job seekers and crowd recruiters and everything like that a way to get into a portal. It's a very social platform, so that will be launching this year. So we're really excited about that and have gotten a lot of industry excitement around that, and actually did our first demo a week and a half ago. So that was really exciting. I hate to fail, so that was really also intimidating. So that's a big deal for us. And then in the next 3 to 5 years, really, our goal in the next 3 years is 25 million. So I hope to exceed that. I like big, hairy, audacious goals. The rest of the C-level has to bring me back down to earth. So 25 million hurts coming out of my mouth, but that's what they tell me is our goal. I would like to see it be more. And then the next 5 years, obviously, the moon, right?
Yeah. Why not?
The stratosphere.
Stratosphere.
Yeah.
So talk about how you came up with the platform name of Gumption.
So Montgomery is called the Gump.
Gotcha.
And so we were all really sitting in the office one day and kind of trying to figure out, we had wireframes.
Yeah.
We were like, this is what we really want to do. This is where we want to go. And we had worked with another company out of Montgomery to do the wireframes for us. And we were all sitting there and we were like, well, we kind of want to play off of Gump. And I can't even remember who really said it, but we came up with Gumption. And we think that it takes gumption, right? To move out of your job and into a new career or into a new job, even if it's in the same career path, right? And so that's kind of where we came up with it. And you can find it. It's like my-gumption.com. It outlines what it is. The demo's not up there yet. We're still working on a couple little things. But there is like an Instagram page and everything, and it kind of goes through what it is going to be. But it has like right now, a lot of staffing agencies send resumes through email. Right. Not super secure. And it has a lot of information on resumes, right? So this would be a portal that we could send resumes through, do vetting through. Companies would be able to put a thumbs up or a thumbs down on a candidate that would shoot back to the recruiter and the salesperson. And have those communications through chat. All of that would log through that one system. The companies would also be able to push, like, let's just say they use Workday. They would be able to push their job orders through Workday, and it would post through that system. So we can get an API with Workday. There's a lot of integrations and things like that just don't happen right now.
You could do so many, if that takes off, you could do so many fun things with getting Tom Hanks as a spokesperson, and you could have peas and carrots and a box of chocolates. And stupid is as stupid does. I mean, there's just a myriad of things that are quotes from
definitely.
That's why I was immediately spinning around in my head, and knowing that you had ties to Alabama. I was thinking Forrest Gump. There's all kinds of cool Forrest Gump plays with this.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think there's a crazy amount of things that you can do with it, right? That people can think about and talk about that just aren't out there right now, right? Like, you could tell me that you have someone that matches a position that I have, or even you could match a position I have, and you're sitting right there next to me. Well, why isn't that served up to my phone, right? Like, we're sitting here together in a room. Like, why isn't it, hey, you fit Grace, right? Grace fits for a position that's on your board. Like, why isn't that served up to my phone, right? Just because we haven't talked about where you want to go or what your history is, it should still be served up.
Sure.
So
cool. And it's an unforgettable name too. People are going to remember that name.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, like, when you go to a job board, even if it's LinkedIn, it goes to a black hole. Like, it doesn't matter how amazing your resume is. There's a gentleman here in Northwest Arkansas, and I love his resume. I think it's fantastic. And he can't get a call back. It's just not in the realm of what we staff for normally, right? And I'm like, it's because you're going to a job board. Like, that's just not how. It's just not. It's not how things are done now, right? So it's got to change.
Yeah, interesting. That's great.
It's also not how Gen Z wants to be hired.
Sure.
Like, you're not going to go to a job board and go look for a job. You're not going to go submit a resume to LinkedIn.
Yeah,
you're going to go find someone and you're going to be like, hey, what you got out there?
Well, especially with how, difficult it is to hire and stuff, finding those unique opportunities and finding that unique talent too.
Yeah.
Instead of going through like a very traditional way where there's so many applicants. Well, there's not. And so that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's all like about who you know. So why, and that's been said for years,
Yep.
And with Gumption, like, why, and I guess the other question is, like, why can't we make something where there's a centralized, hey, all jobs go into this one thing, right? And as long as I get 32 hours through Gumption for a consecutive amount of time, I can get my health care through there, right? Because if let's just say substitutes, right? Perfect example. Someone subs for Fayetteville, but Gumption has a deal with Fayetteville, Springdale, and Bentonville, right? And Rogers, right? And they sub for 32 hours for 3 months, every single week for 3 months, right? They should be able to get their health care through Gumption because Gumption's the one invoicing all of the school district, not.
So in that way, you're kind of like a PEO in that case. And it just happens to be individual gig assignments, but it looks to the world and the federal government, there's no reason why that wouldn't look like a full-time employed or a qualifying employed person.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And then like and it makes it easier for the school districts to say, hey, I had so-and-so call in sick. Let me just ding Gumption, and it goes out to everyone that's been, previously background checked and everything, perfectly, by the state or whatever, whatever the bylaws are. We follow all of that, and then it goes out, and then it dings, and whoever selects it first has the job for the day.
Will that be a separate company, or is that just going to be a practice area or platform within Stratice?
Gumption is a separate company.
It is a separate company. Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
It is. Yeah. We pieced it off as a separate company.
Makes sense because it's, if that one grows and that's one that you're intending to raise some capital against, if there was a reason to do that, it as a platform, you'd likely command a higher valuation.
Right.
It's a different set of metrics than a staffing company typically.
Yeah, and it's just sitting there and completely rethinking the wheel, right? Like staffing's been around forever, right? Like, it's cool. You can rethink it somewhat. Like, but if you really want to get down to it, like, we've got to rethink how to get people and how to get them into positions, and it's gig, right? Like, we've got to be able to get them into short-term positions. And be able to do that. We've got to be able to do truckers, and it's all going to be there, and it's got to be easy.
Very cool.
Yeah, and we were talking about earlier mentioned how people were leaving, kind of moving around to different positions, kind of in a more white collar, higher level positions, but you talk about kind of like the truck drivers and the gig economy positions. Those are the ones I feel like they probably are having the labor shortage because those individuals are looking for other opportunities because it is difficult and it's not being kind of pulled together and made easier and simpler to kind of do that. Simplified, with no insurance or whatever else. So it kind of solves that problem.
Well, and if you link it together for them and they get to like kind of be in control of their own destiny, then it should be easy, right? And there's going to be bumps in the road, right? Like there's definitely a problem somewhere in my thinking, 100%. And someone's going to shoot a hole in it. Probably 1,000, right? But there's obviously a solution to the problem, and we've just got to figure out what that is, right? And I think there's a solution there, and I also think with the same sort of platform, you can also have the solution of the pipeline shortage that we have for IT, right? And that could be, maybe companies can put projects out there and students can sign up to be on the project. And you have like a senior let's just say a dev project. You have a senior person that comes in on that project, and you have students that can sign up for that project. And so they can all work together through that project. So like I think you can, on that platform, kind of create it for what your goal is at the end of the day, right? As long as you put it together on the back end, company end, right? The way you want your stuff to go out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we like to kind of land the plane with, it's the question we ask everybody. It's funny, recently, someone asked me this question. It's like, well, I wasn't prepared for that, even though we ask it every time. But it's the question about if you could take the knowledge that you have now and the wisdom you have now, and you've been running Stratice for a number of years now, and you're about ready to launch Gumption. If you could take that and go back in time and talk to your younger self about the time you were getting out of Hendrix, what advice would you give your younger self?
What advice would I give my younger self? Don't be upset with a good pivot. I think that I got really hard on myself for not going to medical school. And I look back and I think that was just a good pivot. So I think that would be my advice. I think that everyone in their life has a good pivot, right? And you've got to go back and kind of champion that, right? Go back and say, hey, you know what? It was okay to make that move, to make that change, to make that, I took a right instead of a left, and just, really cherish it and really champion what you decided to do and go with it.
Have no guilt or regret.
Yeah, absolutely.
The journey is sometimes self-defining in a way.
100%.
Yeah. That's
so
great.
I think that would be, I think that would be my statement. Yeah.
Great advice. Advice. Where can our audience find out more about Stratice and Gumption and you? What's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah. So, I am on LinkedIn. So Jordan Franklin. And then on mystratice.com is Stratices, and then my-gumption.com is Gumptions. And then obviously those are both on Instagram and LinkedIn as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks
Congratulations
guys for having
on
me.
all the success and best of luck.
Yeah.
And I have every reason to believe that Stratice is continuing to be excellent. You'll probably go way beyond that $25 million target, and Gumption will blow up in a good way too.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
good luck.
much.
Good luck.
And thank you for saying yes to the podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, we were glad to not be in that rejection camp.
I don't know who told you that I was going to say yes, but I did. So.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.